Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram Ram Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesh Gopikanta Radhakanta Namostude Tapta Kanchan Gorangi Radhe Vrindaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire. Hello, Shri Radhe Govind Bhagwan ki Jai. Hello, Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Jai.
Hare Krishna Tarun.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Anilji, Hare Krishna RadheGovind.
Huh? All right. So, start. Yeah, कल हम लोगों ने श्लोक 14 पढ़ा. And as we know, like after Bharat Maharaj gave this transcendental spiritual message to King Rahūgaṇa, yeah, then Parikshit Maharaj is asking to know in more detail from Sukhdev Swamiji. So Sukhdev Swamiji is explaining to Parikshit Maharaj how this material forest is, right? It's being compared to a forest, and Sukhdev Swamiji is describing what happens in this materialistic forest. Yeah. So yesterday we were reading, it says that in this material world, when the conditioned soul cannot arrange for his own maintenance, despite exploiting others, he tries to exploit his own father or son, taking away that relative's possessions, although they may be very insignificant. If he cannot acquire things from his father, son, or other relatives, he is prepared to give them all kinds of trouble. So basically, he's just describing what happens in this materialistic world. Yeah, so we'll start with slok 15. Anilji?
Kvachida sadhya graham davavat priya priyartha viduram sukhodarkam shokagnya nina bhayamano brasham nirveda mupagachati. In this world, family life is exactly like a blazing fire in the forest. There is not the least happiness, and gradually one becomes more and more implicated in unhappiness. In household life, there is nothing favorable for perpetual happiness. Being implicated in home life, conditioned soul is burned by the fire of lamentation. Sometimes he condemns himself as being very unfortunate, and sometimes he claims that he suffers because he performed no pious activities in his previous life. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Basically, always complaining. Yeah. Tarun?
Vachit kala visamita raja kula rakshasasprahartrata priyatama dhanasu pramrataka iva vigata jiva lakshana aste. Government men are always like carnivorous demons called rakshasas, man-eaters. Sometimes these government men turn against the constituent soul and take away all his accumulated wealth. Being bereft of his life's reserved wealth, the conditioned soul loses all enthusiasm. Indeed, it is as though he loses his life. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So different types of sufferings, basically. Hare Krishna, Renaji.
Hare Krishna Bhaiya, Hare Krishna everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Ninaji.
You want me to read?
Yeah.
Okay. Kadachin manoratho bhagat prit पितृपिता महाद्य सत्सदिति स्वप्न nirviti lakshana manubhavati. Sometimes a conditioned soul imagines that his father or grandfather has again come in the form of his son or grandson. In this way, he feels the happiness one sometimes feels in a dream, and the conditioned soul sometimes takes pleasure in such mental concoctions. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Nisha.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare.
Pardon? क्वचिद गृहाश्रम कर्म चोद नाति भर गिरिमारु रुक्षमाणो लोक व्यसन कर्षित मनाः कंटक शर्करा क्षेत्रम प्रविशन्निव सीदति. In household life, one is ordered to execute many yagnas and fruitive activities, especially the Vivaha Yagna, the marriage ceremony for sons and daughters, and the sacred thread ceremony. These are all the duties of a grihastha, and they are very extensive and troublesome to execute. They are compared to a big hill over which one must cross when one is attached to material activities. A person desiring to cross over these ritualistic ceremonies certainly feels pains like the piercing of thorns or pebbles endured by one attempting a climb a hill. Thus, the conditioned soul suffer unlimitedly. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. क्वचिच्च दुह सहेन काया अभ्यंतर वहीना गृहीत सार से कुटुंबाय क्रुद्धति. Sometimes due to bodily hunger and thirst, the conditioned soul becomes so disturbed that he loses his patience and becomes angry with his own beloved sons, daughters, and wife. Thus, being unkind to them, he suffers all the more. Yeah? Anilji?
Yeah. स एव पुनर्निद्रा भगर्गृहीतोऽन्धे तमसि मग्नः शून्यारण्य इव शेते नान्यत्किञ्चन वेदशव इवापविद्धः. Sukhdev Goswami continued speaking to Maharaj Parikshit, "My dear king, sleep is exactly like a python. Those who wander in the forest of material life are always devoured by the python of sleep. Being bitten by this python, they always remain in the darkness of ignorance. They are like dead bodies thrown in a distant forest. The conditioned souls cannot understand what is going on in life." Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah? So Sukhdev Goswami continues to explain Maharaj Parikshit, how the conditioned souls keep suffering but have no idea what's going on, right? Without getting into devotional service. So, Tarun?
कदाचित् भाग्ना मना दंस्त्रो दुर्जना दंड सुखे अलाब्धा निद्रा यक्षनो व्याचिता हृदयेन क्षीयमना विजननो न्याध कुपे न्याधवत patati. In the forest of the material world, the conditioned soul is sometimes bitten by envious enemies, which are compared to serpents and other creatures. Through the tricks of the enemy, the conditioned soul falls from his prestigious position. Being anxious, he cannot even sleep properly. He thus becomes more and more unhappy, and he gradually loses his intelligence and consciousness. In that state, he becomes almost perpetually like a blind man who has fallen into a dark well of ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Rinali?
Kahirsma chitkama madhulavan vichinvan yada paradar paradravyaranya varundhano ragya swami bhirva nihatah patatya pare niraye. The conditioned soul is sometimes attracted to the little happiness derived from sense gratification. Thus, he had illicit sex or steals another's property. At such a time, he may be arrested by the government or chastised by the woman's husband or protector. Thus, simply for a little material satisfaction, he falls into a hellish condition and is put into jail for rape, kidnapping, theft, and so forth. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
अथ च तस्मादुभयथापि हि कर्मास्मिनात्मनः संसारावपनमुदाहरन्ति. Learned scholars and transcendentalists therefore condemn the materialistic path of fruitive activity because it is the original source and breeding ground of material miseries both in the life and in the next. Hare Krishna.
मुक्तिस्ततो यदि बन्धादेव दत्त उपाच्छिनति तस्मादपि विष्णुमित्र इत्यनवस्थितिः है. Stealing or cheating another person out of his money. The conditioned soul somehow or other keeps it in his possession and escapes punishment. Then another man named Devdatta cheats him and takes the money away. Similarly, another man named Vishnumitra steals the money from Devdatta and takes it away. In any case, the money does not stay in one place. It passes from one hand to another. Ultimately, no one can enjoy the money and it remains the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sukhdev Goswami is continuously describing what happens into this forest of materialistic world. Right? Anilji?
शीत वाताजने कादिदैविक भौतिकात्मीयानां दशानां निवारणे कल्पो दुरंत चिंता विष्णु आस्ते. Being unable to protect himself from the threefold miseries of material existence, the conditioned soul becomes very morose and lives a life of lamentation. These threefold miseries are miseries suffered by mental calamity at the hands of the demigods, such as freezing wind and scorching heat, miseries offered by other living entities, and miseries arising from the mind and body themselves. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So many ways the miseries arise in the material existence. Tarun?
क्वचिन् मिथो व्यवहरन् यत्किञ्चित् दानम् अन्येभ्यो वा किन्निका मन्त्रम् अपि अपहरन् यत्किञ्चित् वा विद्वेषम् एति वित्ता सत्यत्. As far as transactions with money are concerned, if one person cheats another by a farthing or less, they become enemies. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nani?
अध्वन्यमुष्मिन्नम् उपसर्गास्तथा सुखदुः खरागद्वेष भयाभिमान प्रमादोन्माद शोक मोह लोभ मात्सर्येर्ष्या पिपासाधि जन्म जरा मरणादयः. In this materialistic life, there are many difficulties, as I have just mentioned, and all of these are insurmountable. In addition, there are difficulties arising from so-called happiness, distress, attachment, hate, fear, false prestige, illusion, madness, lamentation, bewilderment, greed, envy, enmity, insult, hunger, thirst, tribulation, disease, birth, old age, and death. All these combine together to give the materialistic conditioned soul nothing but misery. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nisha?
क्वापि देवमायया स्त्रिया भुजलतोपगूढः प्रस्कन्न विवेकविज्ञानो यद्विहार गृहारम्भा कुलहृदयस्तदा श्रयावसक्त सूत दुहितृकलत्र भाषिताव लोकविचेष्टिता प्रवृत्त हृदय आत्मानमजितात्मा पारे अंधे tamasi prahinoti. Sometimes the conditioned soul is attracted by illusion, personified his wife or girlfriend, and becomes eager to be embraced by women. Thus, he loses his intelligence as well as knowledge of life's goal. At the time no longer attempting spiritual cultivation, he becomes overly attached to his wife or girlfriend and tries to provide her with suitable apartment. Again, he becomes very busy under the shelter of that home and is captivated by the talks, glances, and activities of his wife and children. In this way, he loses his Krishna consciousness and throws himself in the dense darkness of material existence. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, so Sukhdev Goswami is describing like a general person in this world. He is so much attached to the family and so many other things, right? And has no time for Krishna consciousness or the devotional service. And the time flies being attached to material existence. And then at the end, again gets into this cycle of material world, right? The birth, death, old age, and disease. Yeah. कदाचिदीश्वरस्य भगवतो विष्णो सचक्रात परमानवादी द्विपरापराधवर्ग कालो अलक्षणात् परिवर्ततेन वयसा रहंसा हरत ब्रह्म तृणस्तंभादीनां भूतानां निमिषतो मिषतां पितरस्तहृदयस्तमेवेश्वरं कालचक्र निजायुधं साक्षात् भगवन्तनं यज्ञपुरुषमनादृत्य पाखंड देवता है कंगग्रीव ध्रुव कपटराया प्राया आर्य समय परिहता सांकेतना भिद्यते. The personal weapon used by Lord Krishna, the disc, is called Hari Chakra, the disc of Hari. This chakra is the wheel of time. It expands from the beginning of the atoms up to the time of Brahma's death, and it controls all activities. It is always revolving and spanning the lives of the living entities, from Lord Brahma down to an insignificant blade of grass. Thus, one changes from infancy to childhood to youth and maturity, and thus one approaches the end of life. It is impossible to check this wheel of time. This wheel is very exciting because it is the personal weapon of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes the conditioned soul, fearing the approach of death, wants to worship someone who can save him from imminent danger. Yet he does not care for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose weapon is the indefatigable time factor. The conditioned soul instead takes shelter of a man-made god described in unauthorized scriptures. Such gods are like buzzards, vultures, herons, and crows. Vedic scriptures do not refer to that. Imminent death is like the attack of a lion, and neither vultures, buzzards, crows, nor herons can save one from such an attack. One who takes shelter of unauthorized man-made gods cannot be saved from the clutches of death. Yeah. So again, it describes what happens in the materialistic life. And sometimes people start thinking, some people declare themselves as God, people take shelter of them, but that they are not true gods, right? And they cannot save anyone, really, is what is being mentioned. Anilji?
Yeah. Yada pakandi biratma vanchitaistairuru vanchito brahmakulam samabasan sastesham shiramupan nayanadi shrotasmad martha karmanushthanena bhagavato yagya purushasya radhaneva Darochen Shudrakulam Bhajate Nigamachare Shuddhito Yasya mithuni bhavaha kutumba varnam yatha vanar jateha. The pseudo swamis, yogis, and incarnations who do not believe in the Supreme Personality of Godhead are known as pasandis or pasandis. They themselves are fallen and cheated because they do not know the real path of spiritual advancement, and whoever goes to them is certainly cheated on in his turn. When one is thus cheated, he sometimes takes shelter of the real followers of Vedic principles, Brahmanas or those in Krishna consciousness who teach everyone how to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to the Vedic rituals. However, being unable to stick to these principles, these rascals again fall down and take shelter among Sudras who are very expert in making arrangements for sex indulgence. Sex is very prominent among animals like monkeys, and such people who are enlivened by sex may be called descendants of monkeys. Hare Krishna.
Tatrapi nirvarodha sverena viharanam ati kripana buddhir anyonya mukha nirikshasanadina gramya karmanevya vismarata karavadhihi. In this way, the descendants of the monkeys intermingle with each other, and they are generally known as Shudras. Without hesitating, they live and move freely, not knowing the goal of life. They are captivated simply by seeing the faces of one another, which remind them of sense gratification. They are always engaged in material activities known as Gramya Karma, and they work hard for material benefit. Thus, they forget completely that one day their small lifespans will be finished and they will be degraded in the evolutionary cycle. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Sukhdev Swamiji is telling Parikshit Maharaj what happens. People get so entangled into the material lifestyle that they completely forget that one day the lifespan will be finished. Yeah. And that's a fact, right? As we see. And then what happens? Because of no devotional service, they'll be degraded in the evolutionary cycle in the next birth, is what is being mentioned here, right? So here it says, Shranavatam Swa Katha Krishna Punya Savana Kirtana hai. Ridhi Anta Isto Hai Abhadrani Vidyunotisu Rita Satam. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma super soul in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses the desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who relishes his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. One simply has to follow the regulative principles, act like a Brahman, chant the Hare Krishna mantra, and read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, one purifies himself of the baser material modes, tamogun and rajogun, and becoming freed from the greed of these modes, one can attain complete peace of mind. In this way, one can understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead and one's relationship with Him, and thus be promoted to the highest perfection. Yeah? Siddhim Parama Gataha. Tarun?
Vachit Drumvad Ehi Kartatesu Grehesu Ramsyam Yatha Vanara Sutadhara Vatsalo Vyavayaya Shanaha. Just as a monkey jumps from one tree to another, the conditioned soul jumps from one body to another. As the monkey is ultimately captured by the hunter and is unable to get out of captivity, the conditioned soul, being captivated by momentary sex pleasure, becomes attached to different types of bodies and is engaged in family life. Family life affords the conditioned soul a festival of momentary sex pleasure, and thus he is completely unable to get out of the material clutches. Hare Krishna.
एव मध्वन्य वरुन्धानो मृत्यु गज भयात्तमसि गिरिकंदर प्राये. In this material world, when the conditioned soul forgets his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and does not care for Krishna consciousness, he simply engages in different types of mischievous and sinful activities. He is then subjected to the threefold miseries, and out of fear of the elephant of death, he falls into the darkness found in a mountain cave. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Nisha?
क्वचिच्चित् वाताध्यने दैविक भौतिकात्मीयानां दुःखानां प्रतिनिवारणे अकल्पो दुरन्तविषयविषण्ण आस्ते. The conditioned soul suffers many miserable bodily conditions, such as being affected by severe cold or strong winds. He also suffers due to the activities of other living beings and due to natural disturbances. When he is unable to counteract them and has to remain in a miserable condition, he naturally becomes very morose because he wants to enjoy material facilities. Hare Krishna.
क्वचिन्निमित्तो व्यवहरन् यत् किञ्चित् त्वदनमुपयाति वित्तशाटयेन. Sometimes conditioned soul exchanges money, but in due course of time, enmity arises because of cheating. Although there may be a tiny profit, the conditioned souls cease to be friends and become enemies. Anil?
क्वचित् क्षीण धनः तत्शय्यासनाशनाद्युपभोगविहीनो यावत् लब्धं मनोरथोपगता दाने वसित मतिस्ततस्तो ममानादीन जनाद बिल्वते. Sometimes, having no money, the conditioned soul does not get sufficient accommodation. Sometimes he doesn't even have a place to sit, nor does he have the other necessities. In other words, he falls into scarcity, and at that time, when he is unable to secure the necessities by fair means, he decides to seize the property of others unfairly. When he cannot get the things he wants, he simply receives insults from others, and this becomes very morose. Hare Krishna.
एवं वित्त व्यासितंग संग विवृद्ध वैरनुबंधो पूर्व वसनया वित उद्वहति अथापवहति. Although people may be enemies, in order to fulfill their desires again and again, they sometimes get married. Unfortunately, these marriages do not last very long, and the people involved are separated again by divorce or other means. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So Sukhdev Goswami is describing like all different types of things which happens in materialistic world. Rinaji?
एतस्मिन् संसाराध्वनि नाना क्लेशोपसर्ग बाधित आपन्न विपन्नो यत्र यस्तमोह वावेतरस्तत्र विसृज्य जातमुपादाय शोचन् मोहयन् बिभ्यद्विवदन् क्रदन् सहर्षन् गायन् ह्यमान् मानः साधुवर्जितो नैवावतर्ते अद्यापि यत् आरब्ध एष Narloka sartho yamadvanah paramupadishanti. The path of this material world is full of material miseries, and various troubles disturb the conditioned soul. Sometimes he loses and sometimes he gains. In either case, the path is full of danger. Sometimes the conditioned soul is separated from his father by death or other circumstances. Leaving him aside, he gradually becomes attached to others, such as his children. In this way, the conditioned soul is sometimes illusioned and afraid. Sometimes he cries loudly out of fear. Sometimes he is happy maintaining his family, and sometimes he is overjoyed and sings melodiously. In this way, he becomes entangled and forgets his separation from the Supreme Personality of Godhead since time immemorial. Thus, he traverses the dangerous path of material existence, and on this path, he is not at all happy. Those who are self realized simply take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to get out of this dangerous material existence. Without accepting the devotional path, one cannot get out of the clutches of material existence. The conclusion is that no one can be happy in material life. One must take to Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So what is mentioned is, yeah, take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to get out of the dangerous material existence. Yeah, without accepting the devotional path, one cannot get out of the clutches of material existence. Right? Very difficult. It's actually nice purpose. So let's read this. Tarun.
By thoroughly analyzing the materialistic way of life, any sane man can understand that there is not the least happiness in this world. However, due to continuing on the path of danger from time immemorial and not associating with saintly persons, the conditioned soul, under illusion, wants to enjoy this material world. Material energy sometimes gives him a chance at so-called happiness, but the conditioned soul is perpetually being punished by material nature. It is therefore said, Dandya jane raja yena nadyate kubaya. Materialistic life means continuous unhappiness, but sometimes we accept happiness as it appears between the gaps. Sometimes a condemned person is submerged in water and hauled out. Actually, all of this is meant for punishment, but he feels a little comfort when he is taken out of the water. This is the situation with the conditioned soul. All the Shastras therefore advise that one associate with devotees and saintly people. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anil?
Yeah. Sadhu Sang Sarva Sastre Kaya Lava Matra Sadhu Sange Sarva Siddhi Hue Hai. Copy Madhya 22.54. Even by little association with devotees, the conditioned soul can get out of this miserable material condition. This Krishna consciousness movement is therefore trying to give everyone a chance to associate with saintly people. Therefore, all the members of this Krishna consciousness society must themselves be perfect sadhus in order to get a chance to fallen conditioned souls. This is the best humanitarian work. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Isha?
यदिदं योगानुशासनं न वा एतद्वरुन्धते यन्यस्तदण्डामुनय उपशमशीला उपरतात्मानः समवगच्छन्ति. Saintly persons who are friends to all living entities have peaceful consciousness. They have controlled their senses and minds, and they easily attain the path of liberation, the path back to Godhead. Being unfortunate and attached to the miserable material conditions, a materialistic person cannot associate with them. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Read this, Rinari.
The great saint Jada Bharat described both the miserable condition and the means to get out. The only way out of it is association with devotees, and this association is very easy. Although unfortunate people also get this opportunity, due to their great misfortune, they cannot take shelter of pure devotees, and consequently, they continuously suffer. Nonetheless, this Krishna consciousness movement insists that everyone take to this path by adopting the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. The preachers of Krishna consciousness go from door to door to inform people how they can be relieved from the miserable conditions of material life. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Guru Krishna Prasade Paya Bhakti Lata Bija. By the mercy of Krishna and Guru, one can get the seed of devotional service. If one is a little intelligent, he can cultivate Krishna consciousness and be freed from the miserable conditions of material life. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. यद्यपि दिगि भजयिनो यज्विनो एवे राजर्षयः किन्तु परं मृध्ये शैरश्यामेव ममेयमिति कृतवेरानुबन्धनायां विसृज्य स्वयं प्रसंगता है. There were many great saintly kings who were very expert in performing sacrificial rituals and very competent in conquering other kingdoms. Yet, despite their power, they could not attain the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is because those great kings could not even conquer the false consciousness of I am this body and this is my property. Thus, they simply created enmity with rival kings, fought with them, and died without having discharged life's real mission. Yeah, what is the life's real mission? What is the real mission of human life?
Become part of the God.
Krishna consciousness.
Right, yeah. Like get fully surrendered to Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means fully engaged in devotional service. That is the highest perfection in life because that will take you to the back to Godhead, return back to Godhead. That will take you out of the clutches of this continuous cycle of birth and death and old age and disease, right? That is the real mission of the human life. Yeah. And that is the highest perfection of life.
Karmavalim avalambhya tata apada kadhansin narakad vimuktaha punar api evam samsaradhvani vartamano naraloka sartham upayati evam uparigato pi. When the conditioned soul accepts the shelter of the creeper of fruitive activity, may be elevated by his pious activities to higher planetary systems and thus gain liberation from hellish conditions. But unfortunately, he cannot remain there. After reaping the results of his pious activities, he has to return to the lower planetary systems. In this way, he perpetually goes up and comes down. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So what is being mentioned is that some people we can do good pious activities, right? Good donations, good karmas, good service, and we get good results. Because of those good results, we may be promoted to the higher planet. When we say higher planet, it's less disease, bigger age, right? As we move up, right? The age is bigger than 100 years right now, right? And less disease and all that. But then once the karma's results are absorbed, then he has to again come back to the lower planetary system is what is being mentioned. Yeah. So this way he can go up and down and keep circulating in this materialistic world. Anilji?
Yeah. Tasyedamu pagayanti arsh vasyah rajarshirmana sapi mahatmanah nanu vartamar iti nrapo makshikeva garutmatah. Having summarized the teachings of Jada Bharat, Sukhdev Goswami said, "My dear King Parikshit, The path indicated by Jada Bharat is like the path followed by Garuda, the carrier of the Lord, and ordinary kings are just like flies. Flies cannot follow the path of Garuda. And to date, none of the great kings and victorious leaders could follow this path of devotional service, not even mentally. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah, I can say that out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth, is what is mentioned by Lord Sri Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Right? So the path of devotional service is very difficult, yeah, irrespective of who they are. And but it says that in this age, there is the path of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who appeared to deliver all fallen souls. This path is so simple and easy that everyone can take to chanting the holy name of the Lord. Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nameva Kevalam, Kalau Nasti, Iva Nasti, Iva Nasti, Iva Gatir Anyatha. That means we are very satisfied that this path is being opened by this Krishna conscious movement, because so many European and American boys and girls are taking this philosophy seriously and gradually attaining perfection. Yeah. But what is being mentioned is Hare Nam Kevalam. Yeah, the chanting is what is going to get us out of this materialistic world. Yeah. A few more shloks will complete that. Yeah. Rinaji.
Yo dustya jandar sutan suhrida jayam hridisprishaha jaho yuvav malavat duttam shlok lalasaha. While in the prime of life, the great Maharaj Bharat gave up everything because he was fond of serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Uttama Sloka. He gave up his beautiful wife, nice children, great friends, and an enormous empire. Although these things were very difficult to give up, Maharaj Bharat was so exalted that he gave them up just as one gives up stool after evacuating. Such was the greatness of His Majesty. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. So we've been reading about Jada Bharat, Bharat Maharaj. Yeah. Nisha.
योगदुस्त्यजान क्षितिसूतस्वजनार्थदारान्तप्रार्थां श्रियं सूरवरेह सदयावलोकाम् नैश्चर्नृपस्तदूचितं महतां मधुद्विट सेवानुरक्तं मनसामभवो अपि फल्गुः. Sukhdev Goswami continued, My dear king, the activities of Bharat Maharaj was wonderful. He gave up everything difficult for others to give up. He gave up his kingdom, his wife and his family. His opulence was so great that even the demigods envied it, yet he gave it up. He was quite befitting a great personality like him to be great devotee. He could renounce everything because he was so attracted to the beauty, opulence, reputation, knowledge, strength, and renunciation of Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna. Krishna is so attractive that one can give up all the desirable things for his sake. Indeed, even liberation is considered insignificant for those whose minds are attracted to the loving service of the Lord. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Pardon?
यज्ञाय धर्मपतये विधीने पुनाय योगाय सांख्यंय शिरसे प्रकृति शिराय नारायणाय हरये नमः इत्युदाररहस्यं निमग्नवत्मपि यं समुदाचहार. Even though in the body of a deer, Maharaj Bharata did not forget the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, when he was giving up the body of a deer, he loudly uttered the following prayer. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is sacrifice personified. He gives the results of ritualistic activity. He is the protector of religious systems, the personification of mystic yoga, the source of all knowledge, the controller of the entire creation and the supersoul in every living entity. He is beautiful and attractive. I am quitting this body, offering obeisances unto him, and hoping that I may perpetually engage in his transcendental loving service. Uttering this, Maharaj Bharata left his body. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Anilji?
Yeah. Yaidam bhagavata sabhajita vadat gunkarmano rajarshirvartasyanu kritam swastya manamayushyam dhanyam yashasyam swagarya pavaryam vanushanotyakhya syatya sarva evashis atman ashastena kanchan parataiti. Devotees interested in hearing and chanting Shravanam Kirtanam regularly discuss the pure characteristics of Bharat Maharaj and praise his activities. If one submissively hears and chants about the all auspicious Maharaja Bharat, one's lifespan and material opulences certainly increase. One can become very famous and easily attain promotion to the heavenly planets or attain liberation by merging into the existence of the Lord. Whatever one desires can be attained simply by hearing, chanting, and glorifying the activities of Maharaja Bharat. In this way, one can fulfill all his material and his spiritual desires. One does not have to ask anyone else for these things, for simply by studying the life of Maharaj Bharat, one can attain all desirable things. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so this was about Maharaj Bharat, and this ends the Bhakti Vedanta purpose of the 5th canto, 14th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam entitled The Material World as the Great Forest of Enjoyment. Yeah. Well, Srimad Bhagavatam ki
Yay.
jai. So I think next time we will start chapter 15, which is about the glories of the descendants of King Rahūgaṇa. So we are just a little bit over time because I just wanted to complete that adhyaya. And again, now, so we have 5 minutes of, we'll hear Lord Jagannath's Ashtakam in a different voice. It's just around 5 minutes. Yeah. So let's hear that and then.
कदाचित् कालिन्दे तटविपिन सङ्गीतकरवो मुदा गोपी नारी वदन कमलास्वादमधुपः रमा शम्भु ब्रह्मामरपति गणेशार्चितपदो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे भुजे सव्ये वेणुं शिरसि शिखिपिञ्छं कटितटे दुकूलं नेत्रान्ते सहचरकटाक्षं विदधते सदा श्रीमद्वृन्दावनवसति लीलापरिचयो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे महाम्भोदे स्थिरे कनकरुचिरे नीलशिखरे वसन् प्रासादान्तः सहजबलभद्रेण बलिना सुभद्रा मध्यस्थः सकलसुरसेवावसरदो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे कृपापारावारास्सजलजलदश्रेणिरुचिरो रमावाणी सौ सुरैः सुरेन्द्रैराराध्य श्रुतिगणशिखागीतचरितो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे रथारूढो गच्छन् पथि मिलितभूदेवपटलैः स्तुतिप्रादुर्भावं प्रतिपदमुपाकर्ण्य सदयः दया सिन्धुर्बन्धुः सकलजगता सिन्धुसुतया जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे परब्रह्मा पीडकुवलयदलोत्फुल्लनयनो निवासी नीलाद्रौ निहितचरणोऽनन्तशिरसि रसानन्दो राधा सरसवपुरालिङ्गनसखो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे न वै प्रार्थ्यं राजन्न च कनकताम्भोगविभवम् न याचेऽहं रम्यान्निखिलजनकाम्यां वरवधूं सदा काले काले प्रमथपतिना गीतचरितो जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे हरत्वं संसारं द्रुततरमसारं सुरपते हरत्वं पापानां विततिमपरायादपदे अहो दीनानाथं निहितमचलं निश्चितपदम् जगन्नाथ स्वामी नयनपथगामी भवतु मे
Right?
आवाज नहीं आ रही ठीक से गगन जी।
कल एकादशी है ना विजय? Can't hear you. It's okay, we can close.
या अभी भी नहीं आ रही क्या आवाज?
अब आ
अब आ
रही है।
रही है।
आई थिंक वो शेयर स्क्रीन में कुछ इशू था आई थिंक ओके एनीवेज सो या कल एकादशी है तो हैप्पी एकादशी टू एवरीवन एंड द नेक्स्ट
Happy
वीक
एकादशी।
या next week is a long weekend so I think we'll take a break on the long weekend
Okay.
तो सब लोग कहाँ ट्रेवल कर रहे हैं तो ठीक है and then we'll meet on the next Monday
Okay.
is on that's 10th July yeah
Okay.
so तब तक everyone enjoy have fun
Okay. Happy 4th of July, everybody.
happy
Same to
Independence
you.
Day
Thank you. Happy 4th.
Independence spiritual day not so
Yeah.
materialist so
Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna
Happy 4th, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.